Hello everyone. A year ago I took my parents to court. The reason was that they abandoned my 6-year-old son at a church just because I refused to help my younger brother with $50,000. After what happened, even though I didn't want to, I had to protect my child. Let's dive into the story to understand why I had to make such a harsh decision. Hello, my name is Bennett. I'm 32 years old and live in Atlanta with my wife and 2 kids. To this day, I still remember clearly those early days when Audrey and I had just gotten married. 4 years before that, we met at Georgia Tech, where I studied engineering, and she was in nursing school. After 4 years of dating, we married in the spring of 2018. When the wedding was over, we rented a 2-story house in the suburbs of Atlanta. It had a big backyard and was in a safe neighborhood for kids. In 2019, our son Logan was born. He had his mother's blue eyes and a bright smile that always melted my heart. From day one, Logan became my life's joy and most significant meaning. The early years of raising Logan were pleasing. My parents Robert and Margaret often visited and adored their grandson. They would bring toys, read him stories, and sometimes even ask to keep him overnight so Audrey and I could have some time. With a loving voice, Margaret would often say to Logan, "You are the pride of our family." Every time he heard that, Logan would giggle and run into her arms. When Logan turned 5, Audrey and I talked about having another child. We both wanted Logan to have a sibling to play with and learn to share. A few months later, my happiness multiplied when Audrey told me she was pregnant with our second child. I truly felt that our life was perfect at that moment, and I couldn't have asked for anything more. To help you understand the conflict that came later, I need to tell you about Derek, my younger brother, who's 4 years younger than me. Since we were kids, Derek was spoiled by our parents in a way I never got to experience. When Derek was 10 and wanted to learn piano, our parents immediately signed him up for expensive top-tier lessons that cost thousands of dollars. But when I was 14 and asked to join the school's soccer team, they said no because it was too expensive at that time. When I asked why, Robert just replied coldly, "Bennett, you're the older brother. You need to understand and make sacrifices for your sibling." After that moment, I learned my first lesson about giving things up for Derek. Derek was wise and good with words, but he lacked persistence in everything he did. He started studying business in college, but dropped out halfway to find his passion. After that, he jumped from one career to another, trying photography, graphic design, and online marketing. Whenever Derek failed at something, Margaret would say, "Derek just hasn't found the right job yet. He needs more time." Whenever I heard those words, I felt a little uneasy about favoritism. In 2020, when Derek was 24, he opened a small coffee shop in downtown Atlanta. One weekend evening, he came to my house, his eyes lit up with excitement. With an eager tone, Derek said, "Bennett, I've got a great business idea. I want to open a European-style cafe." Hearing that, I asked, "How much do you need to get started?" After that question, Derek answered, like he had rehearsed, "I need you to loan me $8,000. I promise I'll pay you back within a year." Even though I felt bad about it, I agreed to help, thinking Derek had finally found some direction. The result was that the coffee shop lasted 6 months before shutting down due to losses. Later, when I asked about the repayment, Derek said, "I'm struggling right now. Kiame, can I pay it off slowly?" That's when I realized Derek probably never planned to pay me back in the first place. 2 years later, Derek ran into more trouble, this time with credit cards. He owed $5,000 and faced a possible lawsuit from the bank. Once again, he came to me with pleading eyes. With a desperate voice, Derek said, "I need your help this time. I swear this is the last time." I knew I was making a mistake at that moment, but I still agreed because I didn't want Derek to get sued. In just 4 years that I had loaned Derek $13,000 and never saw a single dollar returned. Whenever Audrey asked about the money, I would say, "Family has to help each other." But deep down, I was growing tired of carrying the role of the good older brother that I had been stuck with for 28 years. And then the family drama started a little over a year ago. And it all began with my younger brother. I remember it clearly. It was around March 2024 when Derek came to my house on a Saturday afternoon, his eyes glowing as if he had just discovered the secret to getting rich. At the time, Logan was playing in the living room. As soon as he saw Uncle Derek, Logan hugged him, saying, "Uncle Derek, I missed you so much." Derek smiled and patted Logan's head. "I missed you too. You've gotten so big." After Logan returned to playing, Derek sat on the sofa and started sharing his newest idea. With a confident voice, Derek said, "Bennett, this time I found a real business opportunity. I want to start a transportation company." When I heard that, I felt a chill run down my spine. I asked, "Do you have any experience in the transportation industry?" After a short pause, Derek answered, "I've done my research. This industry is booming, especially after the pandemic, when people started shopping online more." He explained that he had found a business partner, created a detailed business plan, and even started negotiating with a few potential clients. On paper, everything sounded perfect. Then at the end of the conversation, Derek said, "I need $75,000 to get started. I already have $25,000 in savings. Can you help me with the rest?" When I heard the number and the request, I sighed and said, "Derek, that's a lot of money. I need some time to think about it." Derek nodded after hearing my response, but I could see the disappointment in his eyes. About a month later, Derek called to share some good news. He told me he had secured a loan from the bank and officially launched his company. At that moment, I congratulated my brother and quietly hoped that this time he would succeed. For the first 3 months, Derek was thrilled about his new business. He bought 2 used trucks, hired 2 drivers, and began taking orders. Everything seemed to be going well. But by the 4th month, I started hearing Derek complain about problems like rising fuel costs, delayed customer payments, and one of the drivers quitting unexpectedly. With a worried voice, Derek said, "Things aren't going the way I expected. I'm facing some financial trouble." Hearing that, I felt genuinely sad for him. By the 5th month, Derek admitted that his company was taking heavy losses. He owed money to the bank fuel suppliers, and even the one remaining driver for unpaid vistas. Then on a weekend evening in October, Derek came to my house, looking worn out with red eyes, and no trace of the confidence he once had. With a trembling voice, Derek confessed, "I failed. The company's about to go bankrupt, and I don't know what to do." After those words, I felt sorry for him, and I knew Derek was about to ask for something I couldn't give. After a brief silence, Derek looked up at me and said, "Bennett, I need you to lend me $50,000 to save the company and pay off my debts." As soon as the words left his mouth, I felt a tightness in my chest. $50,000 wasn't a small amount, especially when Audrey and I were saving up for the arrival of our second child. I responded honestly and firmly, "Derek, I've helped you many times. I can't do it this time." When I said no, Derek's whole demeanor changed. His face turned red and his tone became sharp. In an angry voice, Derek shouted, "You're doing well financially and still stingy with your brother. Do you have any idea the hell I'm living through?" I tried to stay calm and explained, "Derek, I've helped you with $13,000 over the past 4 years and haven't seen a single dollar back. I have my own family and responsibilities too." Right after I said that, Derek stood up and stepped toward me, his eyes filled with resentment. He growled, "You're bringing up old debts while I'm struggling. You're seriously counting pennies with your brother." At that moment, I realized Derek never truly saw me as his brother. To him, I was just an ape. I stood and said, "You need to learn to stand alone, Derek. I can't keep saving you forever. You're 28 now." When he heard that, Derek gave a bitter laugh and said, "Fine. You'll see. I'll tell Mom and Dad about this. They'll see what kind of person you are." After saying that, Derek turned around and walked out of the house, slamming the door behind him. After he left, I sat down and held my head. Audrey came out from the kitchen with a worried look. She sat next to me and asked, "Are you okay?" I looked at her and said, "I think I just lost a brother." Audrey wrapped her arms around me and whispered, "You did the right thing. We can't sacrifice our family's happiness for someone who doesn't appreciate it. At that moment, I felt her support and knew I had made the right decision. 3 days after the argument with Derek, my mother Margaret called me. As soon as I picked up, she spoke without even saying hello. "Bennett, I heard from Derek that you refused to help him. I want to know what's going on." Hearing the firmness in her voice, I sighed and explained, "Mom, I've already helped Derek so many times. I can't lend him $50,000 this time." Just a few seconds later, Margaret responded in a lecturing tone. "Family is supposed to support each other in tough times. Derek is going through a crisis, and you're selfish." When I heard that, a slow-burning anger rose inside me. I said, "Do you even know I gave Derek $13,000 and never got a single cent back?" She kept quiet momentarily and replied, "Money doesn't matter as much as brotherhood. You're well off now and still keeping score with your brother." After hearing that, I realized I couldn't continue the conversation. I told her goodbye and hung up. About 2 hours later, my father Robert called. With a cold tone, Robert said, "Bennett, you've disappointed me. You only care about your wife and have forgotten your real family." Those words made my heart stop for a second. I tried to explain, "Dad, I haven't forgotten my family, but I also have responsibilities to my wife and kids." After a short silence, Robert replied, "Derek is your brother. If he goes bankrupt, you'll blame him for not helping." And with that, he hung up without giving me a chance to respond. After the call, I sat in the living room feeling empty. Audrey was working the night shift at the hospital. Logan was already asleep, and I felt more alone than ever. 2 days later, Margaret called again. This time her voice sounded gentler, but still persuasive. She said, "Bennett, I don't want our family to fall apart over money. Please reconsider." Hearing that, I answered firmly, "Mom, I've decided. I can't keep rescuing Derek forever." The moment those words left my mouth, Margaret went completely silent. Then she said something that sent a chill down my spine. "If you don't help Derek, don't expect us to forget this." At that moment, I realized I was standing at a crossroads. Either I continued being a slave to my family, or I dared to draw the line. In September 2024, Audrey entered the 8th month of her pregnancy. Despite the tension with my own family, I tried my best to focus on preparing for the arrival of our new baby. At that time, Logan was thrilled about becoming a big brother. Every night before bed, he would place his hand on Audrey's belly and talk to his little sister. Logan would often say with his innocent voice, "Baby, I'm waiting for you to come out so we can play together." During those moments, Audrey would smile and gently pat Logan's head. Times like that helped me forget all the stress surrounding Derek and my parents. We had set up the baby's room in soft pink tones, bought all the essentials, and even let Logan help pick out his sister's first toys. During that period, Robert and Margaret still called occasionally, but no longer brought up Derek. Instead, they asked about Audrey's pregnancy and showed interest in Logan. Then one weekend evening, Margaret called and said, "I want to visit Logan. I miss him so much." When I heard that, I felt relieved, thinking maybe everything was finally behind us. I agreed to let my parents visit the following weekend. When Robert and Margaret arrived, they brought gifts for Logan and seemed genuinely cheerful. They asked about Audrey, played with Logan, and even helped prepare dinner. Seeing the family so happy, I believed we might have survived the crisis, but I didn't know our family was about to face an absolute storm. About 2 months later, I was getting ready for work on a Monday morning when Audrey suddenly screamed from the bathroom. I rushed in immediately and found her holding her belly, her face twisted in pain. At that moment, I knew the baby was coming. We headed straight to the hospital. When we arrived, the nurses quickly brought Audrey into the delivery room. The doctor examined her and told us the baby would be born in a few hours. While waiting for Audrey to give birth, I suddenly remembered a significant issue. We had to pick Logan up from school that afternoon. Right away, I thought of my parents. I needed their help. Without hesitation, I called Robert. When I asked if they could pick up Logan, they agreed without a second thought. My father said, "Don't worry about a thing. Just focus on Audrey at the hospital." We'll take care of Logan." Hearing that, I felt deeply grateful. In such an urgent moment, nothing meant more than having family support. After I hung up with my dad, I quickly called Logan's school to inform them that his grandparents would pick him up instead of us. The teacher noted the update and wished Audrey a smooth delivery. After 6 hours of labor, my daughter Sophia was born at 2:30 in the afternoon, weighing 3.2 kgs. She was healthy, with her mother's blue eyes and soft blonde hair. I couldn't hold back my tears when the doctor placed Sophia in my arms. With a voice trembling from emotion, I whispered to Audrey, "Thank you for giving me such a beautiful gift." Hearing that, Audrey smiled, exhausted but happy. When Audrey and Sophia were moved into a regular room, I called my family to share the good news. With excitement in my voice, I said, "Sophia's here, the baby is healthy and doing great." When she heard the news, Margaret shouted joyfully, "Oh my God, we have another granddaughter." After that call, I reminded them about picking up Logan that afternoon. They confirmed they remembered and said they would bring Logan to the hospital that evening to meet his little sister. I thanked them immediately, not knowing that just a few hours later, I would go through something I would never forget for the rest of my life. Around 6:00 in the evening, when I still hadn't received a call from my parents to confirm they had picked up Logan, I immediately tried calling them. But after nearly 20 calls to my mother and father, no one answered. No one replied to my messages either. At that point, a wave of emotion came over me. I felt worried, restless, and full of dread. By 6:30, while I was still trying to call home, my phone suddenly rang from an unknown number. As soon as I picked up, a calm male voice spoke. "Hello, this is Pastor Williams. I'm looking for Mr. Bennett Morrison." The moment I heard that, my heart nearly stopped. I replied, "Yes, this is Bennett. What's going on, Pastor?" Immediately, Pastor Williams answered with concern in his voice. "We found a boy named Logan sitting alone in the church. He has a wristband with your name and phone number on it." At that moment, it felt like my entire world collapsed around me. I nearly shouted, "My son is there. Is he hurt?" After a few seconds, Pastor Williams replied, "He's not hurt, but he's terrified and has been crying a lot." With my voice shaking, I said, "Pastor, I'm on my way now. Please don't let anyone take my son anywhere." Pastor Williams responded immediately, "We'll wait for you. He's safe here." After I ended the call, I turned to Audrey and I told her, "My parents left Logan at a church. I have to go get him now." Hearing that, Audrey suddenly burst into tears. How could they do that to Logan? I kissed her forehead and said, "Stay here with Sophia. I'll bring Logan home right away." About 30 minutes later, I arrived at the church. Those 30 minutes felt longer than 30 years. When I got there, Pastor Williams was waiting at the main entrance. He looked to be in his 50s, with a kind face and eyes filled with concern. As soon as he saw me, he said, "Mr. Bennett, the boy is in my office." When I stepped into the office, I saw Logan curled up in a large chair, clutching the teddy bear Audrey had given him. His eyes were red from crying, his hair was messy, and his clothes were wrinkled. Logan ran into my arms when he saw me and sobbed, "Daddy, I was so scared. Grandma and Grandpa said you didn't love me anymore." Hearing those words, I held Logan tightly and felt my heart shatter into 1,000 pieces. At that moment, I knew I would never be able to forgive my parents for what they had done. After bringing Logan back to the hospital and ensuring he had calmed down, I confronted my parents directly. It was already close to 10 at night, but I couldn't wait until morning. I drove to their house with a heart full of rage. When I got there, I rang the doorbell repeatedly until Robert opened the door. He didn't look surprised to see me. When I saw him, I shouted, "How could you do that to Logan? He's only 6 years old." Robert looked at me coldly and said, "You chose money over family. Now you know what it feels like to lose one." As soon as those words left his mouth, it felt like someone had stabbed a knife straight into my chest. A moment later, Margaret appeared from the living room with a cold expression. She looked straight at me and said, "I raised you for 32 years. If you don't help your brother when he's struggling, I don't need to care about your child." Hearing that, I felt like I was standing before two strangers. With anger in my voice, I said, "Logan is your grandson. How could you use a child to get revenge?" Robert responded coldly, "We just wanted to teach you the value of family, but you're too selfish to understand." At that point, I realized that the people standing before me were no longer the parents I once knew. After a few seconds, I looked them both in the eyes and said, "From this day on, I will consider myself parentless, and I will take you to court for child abandonment." When I finished speaking, Robert shouted, "You're taking your parents to court. Go ahead and do it." I turned around and left the house, slamming the door behind me. Inside, I knew I had just lost my biological family, but I also knew I had to protect my own. I felt a deep pain and a powerful sense of resolve at that moment. Logan would never go through anything like this again. When I returned to the hospital around midnight, Audrey was still awake. She sat beside the bed, holding Logan as he slept in her arms. When she saw me, Audrey looked up and asked with a worried voice, "How did it go?" I sat beside her and told her everything about the confrontation with my parents. After hearing it all, Audrey seemed like she couldn't believe what she had just heard. She didn't say anything. She just held Logan even tighter. Audrey called her parents the next morning to tell them what had happened. Thomas and Linda, Audrey's mom and dad, were speechless after hearing the story. After that, Thomas said, "We're driving up immediately. We can't let this go." That afternoon, Tom and Linda arrived at the hospital. Tommy was a retired engineer, and Linda had been an elementary school teacher. Both of them were kind people who deeply loved their family. When she saw Logan, Linda wrapped her arms around him and said, "Sweetheart, Grandma and Grandpa will protect you." Hearing that, Logan smiled and ran into her arms. Thomas sat beside me and said, "Bennett, we can't believe your parents would do something like that to a 6-year-old. That's not something people with hearts would ever do." Hearing those words gave me a sense of comfort, knowing some people truly understood and stood by me. After that, Linda added, "We'll support you through the legal process. This can't be ignored." When I heard her say that, it felt like a light had finally broken through the darkness. In the following days, Thomas and Linda stayed in Atlanta to help our family. They cared for Logan while Audrey recovered from childbirth, and I handled the legal matters. With his grandparents around, Logan slowly began to trust again. They read him stories, played with him, and ensured he always felt loved. One evening, Logan looked at me and asked, "Daddy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me like Nana and Papa?" Hearing that, I held Logan close and said, "Sweetheart, not everyone knows how to love the right way. But Daddy, Mommy, and your grandparents on Mommy's side will always love you with all our hearts." After I said that, Logan nodded and leaned into me. I realized that real family isn't about shared blood at that moment. It's about the people who stand by you and protect you when life gets hard. 2 days after we were discharged from the hospital, Derek called me. As soon as I picked up, he spoke right away. His voice was shaky and full of fear. "Bennett, I just heard from Mom and Dad about what happened with Logan. I can't believe it." Hearing that, a wave of anger rose inside me. I asked him, "Did you know they planned to do this?" Derek replied sincerely, "I swear I had no idea. I only vented to them about you refusing to help. I never thought they would go that far." Hearing his voice, I could sense that he was telling the truth. After that, Derek asked how Logan was doing and checked in on Audrey and the new baby. After the call, I felt a little relieved. At least Derek showed genuine regret and seemed willing to take responsibility for what had happened. At that moment, I realized that maybe Derek had finally learned the most important lesson of his life. Our actions can profoundly affect the innocent. The following Monday, with financial support from Thomas and Linda, I first met with attorney Jennifer Martinez, an expert in child protection and family law cases. Jennifer was a 45-year-old woman with 20 years of experience in the field. She had sharp eyes, but carried a sense of deep compassion as she listened to my story. After hearing everything Jennifer said, "This is one of the most serious cases I've encountered. Using a child for personal revenge is unacceptable. Hearing that gave me a sense of reassurance. I quickly asked, "Do we have enough evidence to file a lawsuit?" A few seconds later, Jennifer responded, "We have Pastor Williams's testimony, and we may be able to get surveillance footage from the church. I'll reach out to obtain the recordings." Over the next week, Jennifer worked diligently to gather evidence. Pastor Williams agreed to cooperate and provided a detailed statement describing Logan's condition when he was found. At the same time, the church's security camera captured footage of Robert and Margaret dropping Logan off at 5 Hoseriai in the evening. They left without saying a word to the church staff. Watching the footage, I saw Logan run after them, only to be gently pushed back by Margaret, who told him to sit still. That moment shattered my heart into 1,000 pieces. Jennifer also obtained psychological records from Logan's doctor. The report indicated signs of stress and anxiety in Logan following the incident. After 2 weeks of preparation, Jennifer filed a lawsuit against Robert and Margaret in court. The charges included child endangerment, emotional abuse, and abandonment. When they received notice of the lawsuit, Robert and Margaret hired their attorney and tried to deny all the allegations. Their lawyer later contacted Jennifer to suggest settling the case privately, but I refused at that moment. I told Jennifer, "I want this handled in court. No one should be allowed to hurt a child without facing the consequences." After hearing that, Jennifer nodded in agreement, and we moved forward with the case. 3 months later, the trial took place at Fulton County Court. Due to the seriousness of the case, several local reporters were present to cover the proceedings. I sat in the front row in court with Thomas and Linda that day. Logan was not allowed to attend to protect his emotional well-being. Audrey stayed home to care for Sophia. Robert and Margaret sat on the opposite side with their attorney. I noticed that both of them avoided looking in our direction. Presiding over the case was Judge Patricia Henderson, a 55-year-old woman with 25 years of experience in family court. When the trial began, Jennifer opened with a strong statement. "Your Honor, this case is not just about child abandonment. It is about using an innocent child as a tool for personal revenge." Hearing Jennifer speak reassured me that taking them to court was the right decision. Immediately after, Robert and Margaret's attorney tried to defend them. "Your Honor, my clients only wanted to teach their son the value of family. They had no intention of harming their grandson." As soon as the statement ended, Jennifer stood and responded firmly. "Your Honor, abandoning a 6-year-old child in a public place cannot be considered a life lesson." Pastor Williams was then called to testify. He described Logan's condition when he was found in detail. Next, the surveillance footage from the church was shown in court. The scene of Logan running after his grandparents, only to be left behind, brought tears to many eyes in the room. My brother Derek was then called to the stand. He admitted to pressuring our parents, but insisted he did not know their plan. Logan's psychologist also presented findings about the emotional impact on him following the incident. Finally, Robert and Margaret were called to speak in their defense. They continued to justify their actions. My mother said, "We only wanted Bennett to understand that family matters more than money." Hearing those words hurt deeply because she still could not see the harm she had caused. After both sides had presented their case, Judge Henderson called a 30-minute recess before delivering her verdict. When the court resumed, she read the judgment in a stern voice. "The court finds that the defendants engaged in child abandonment and caused significant psychological harm. The court sentences Robert Morrison and Margaret Morrison to 18 months of probation each, a fine of $15,000 each, and prohibits contact with their grandson Logan Morrison for 3 years. Hearing that verdict felt like a massive weight had been lifted off my shoulders. At that moment, I knew Logan was safe and justice had been served. 1 month after the trial, we decided to stay in Atlanta, but we completely changed how we lived. Instead of running away from painful memories, we built new ones in the same home. Audrey left her job at the hospital to focus on caring for our 2 children. Having her at home full-time made Logan feel much more secure. With a gentle voice, Audrey said to Logan, "From now on, Mommy will be home with you and baby Sophia every day." Logan hugged Audrey tightly and shouted, "I love having Mommy at home." Later, Thomas and Linda moved to Atlanta to be closer to us. They sold their old house and bought a new one just 15 minutes away, devoting all their love to their 2 grandchildren. Every weekend, Logan would stay at their house. Thomas taught him how to ride a bike and helped him in the garden, while Linda read stories and cooked Logan's favorite meals. Linda often told Logan, "Grandma and Grandpa love you and Sophia more than anything. You two are everything to us." Whenever he heard that, Logan would smile brightly and reply, "I love you too, Grandma and Grandpa." As for Sophia, she grew a little more each day and became the new joy of our family. Logan adored his little sister and always helped us take care of her. He would often report her little milestones. He'd say, "Daddy, Sophia smiled at me." Moments like that, I would tell him, "You're an amazing big brother." As for Derek, my younger brother, he still called occasionally to check in, but he had become more independent. Eventually, he found a stable job at a logistics company in Atlanta and repaid the money he owed me in monthly installments. I remember during the first month when he paid me $500, he said, "I've learned my lesson. I will pay you back and never bring pain to anyone again." After hearing that, I truly felt that my brother had matured. As for Robert and Margaret, we completely cut off contact. They tried to call and even asked relatives to step in. But I stood firm in my decision, even when some family members said, "Bennett, no matter what, they're still your parents." I was ready to answer real parents would never hurt their children or grandchildren. In the following months, life in Atlanta became peaceful and much happier. Logan fully recovered and became a joyful, smart little boy. Sophia grew up healthy and brought laughter to our home every single day. About 3 months later, we renovated the house, repainted the walls, and replaced the furniture to create a more positive and refreshing space. Most importantly, we filled the home with love from our small family and the grandparents who never left our side. Every evening, after both kids had gone to sleep, Audrey and I would sit in the backyard, sipping coffee and discussing the future. Sometimes she would ask if I ever regretted my decision, and in those moments, I would always answer firmly, "No." That's the end of my story. What do you think? Was I wrong to take my parents to court? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely want to hear from you. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the story. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.